Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good moment to you wherever you are and whenever you are on this sweet, wild, sacred earth. I'm Julie Ling, and this is the Voice of Wonder. Thank you so much for joining me. This morning, I noticed myself running late. I noticed myself missing things. I grabbed my Carmex because my lips are chronically chapped, and I still don't know where I put it. It seems to have disappeared. The tube is gone from the face of the earth for the moment. Some mornings are just that way. And I noticed as I continued to put one thing after another in front of coming and sitting down here in front of my laptop and looking through the camera to you, that I was afraid to. Yesterday, I made a mistake that felt very foolish to me. I couldn't believe I'd made it in retrospect. And it's something that matters a lot to the person that it affects. And I found myself feeling critical. And this morning I realized I felt ashamed. And I could hear my mother saying when I was a child and other adults, you should be ashamed of yourself. I have a friend and mentor, Nanakasha, who has often said in groups I've been in with her, you should be ashamed, and shame on you is a curse. Don't ever say that. And I've come to agree with her that it is a sort of curse. And I noticed this morning that it keeps me, and I suspect a lot of people, from being willing to make mistakes. And since mistakes are how we learn, it keeps us from our humanity. And it keeps us from growing and learning, developing new skills, trying out new things. If you've said for a long time, most of us, if we had to learn to walk as adults rather than as babies, as toddlers, we would still be dragging around briefcases because we would try once and then say, no, I'm not doing this if I'm going to make mistakes and look foolish. I'm not going to. You can't make me. Other people will see me and laugh. And no. So we'd be crawling around dragging our briefcases or whatever with us. And that's sad. That is so sad that at once we're expected to embrace and own our humanity and to never make mistakes. And if we've made a mistake, act as if we are wrong and bad. And really, when I heard those words of my mother's come up, in my mother's voice come up for me, I thought, wow, what part of me is still internalized? You should be ashamed of yourself. That I have learned to shame on me. That I have learned that that's a thing I should do, that good people are ashamed of themselves when they do something wrong. And according to the scale of, I can't remember now the term for it, David Hawkins, of the vibrational scale, that's the term. Shame is the lowest vibration we can hold and still be alive on the planet. And to be told we should be there, is so painful, is so limiting, is so compressing and contracting. And even as I'm speaking about this, there's a voice inside of me saying, you shouldn't be talking about this, Julie. And a whisper in the distance of, shame on you. You should always be positive. You should always talk about uplifting things. You should. And I'm very careful about using that word in my spoken language because, as Louise Hay once said, when I use the word should, I'm always wrong. Either I was wrong, I am wrong, or I'm going to be wrong. I prefer the word could because could implies possibilities. And yet, here it is coming out of my voice, out of my mouth, out loud. And that's astonishing to me and tells me how deep it is. It happens a lot internally, and I'm noticing that and aware of it and consciously changing my inner dialogue. But the other thing that I really noticed this morning and have noticed in the past is that it's never that voice from out there that really hurts me. It's when the inside part of me joins it. When the inside part leaves me, allies with an old outer critic, joins it, hands on hips, and says, "You should be ashamed of yourself. You are wrong and bad. This is irredeemable." I can remember apologizing to my mother and having her look at me with a look of contempt and saying, "Sorry isn't good enough, Julie. I can't stand to be around you right now. Go away. Get out of my sight." That feeling of being irredeemable from having made a mistake. And if this is bringing up that voice in you or shame in you, I invite you to not join that external voice that's become internalized, but to join the part of you that's been wounded by it. And just to be present with yourself and hold that part of you that's afraid you're irredeemable because of mistakes you've made. That the learning doesn't matter, only the mistake does, and you can never get away from it. And maybe you were blessed not to have heard that voice externally or not to taken it on, not to have taken it on. And I invite you in this moment to ignore the dog yipping outside the door, as I'm having a hard time doing, and to just drop in and be with the part of you. I also invite you to notice the times that you've made a big mistake, like faceplant, I can't believe I did that. And that those are ones you never do that again. It's so big and so in your face. You don't forget. There's little learning curve. You just don't do it again. And how powerful that learning is, how deep it is. And also, I invite you to notice whenever this sort of thing comes up inside of you. How do you respond? Do you give your inner self an inner slap across the face and call yourself names? Do you dissolve into a pool of pain or shame or blame? Do you ignore it? Toss it down the stairs and pretend it never happened? Do you meet it with kindness and love? Maybe sometimes, maybe a little more, maybe never. Maybe for small things, maybe not for big ones. Whatever comes up for you, I invite you to notice this yipping in the background is just a punctuation, a part of the musical background of my words. To notice the breath rising and falling within you. And even if you're not able to let it rise up and meet the part of you that might be in pain. And as the breath falls, let it take away with it a tiny bit of that. Let it soothe just a little bit. Just sitting with the rise and fall, the tune and fall of your own breath, letting it meet you wherever you are. And I invite you to another way of looking at mistakes. I've always loved the children's show that aired in the US 25, 30 years ago, The Magic School Bus. The main character was a teacher named Miss Frizzle, who was voiced by Lily Tomlin. And one of the things she so often would say is, all right, class, it's time to get messy, take chances, and make mistakes. Like it was the best thing in the world. And I loved that. My ex and I were delighted when we learned I was pregnant that it would be a reason we could offer to other people why we watched Magic School Bus, Reading Rainbow, Arthur, but a whole slew of children's animated and other programming that we watched anyway. But like people would get this, oh, you're having a baby, so of course you're watching those things. Well, that's good. And something about the way that she said that. All right, class, it's time to get messy, take chances, and make mistakes. Such an invitation, this is how we learn. This is how we do things. It's time. Go for it. I remember Colette saying, and this was the tagline for my signature for my email for years, you will do foolish things, but do them with enthusiasm. I love that too. And for years, I've had this vision of wanting to be a sort of a Ms. Frizzle for not so much current children, but the inner children inside of us grown-ups, because we never got that message, most of us. And the old ones are still inside. I can't believe you did that. I can still hear my mother saying in my 30s, Julie, I can't believe someone as smart as you could do something so stupid. And the shame I felt in hearing that. And often when I do something that looks stupid to me, I hear that voice, those words. I can still see myself on the stairwell to the downstairs in their house. How symbolic is that? That was heading downstairs. And the challenge for me continues to be, do I join it? Do I join that memory, that moment, which clearly is some trauma for me, or I wouldn't see the stairwell around me, my mother below me, the smell of the carpet, the feel of tension and my shoulders seizing up, as I didn't feel like I could respond in any way to defend myself would just get another heaping dose of shame. And it's so challenging not to join that. Say, yeah, you're right. They were all right. There's nothing good about me. And part of me did not want to come and look through the camera at you, that you might see some hidden truth, that my mistakes are irretrievable, irrevocable, and make me worthless, that you might see that and I would crumble. It's the line in an Ed Sheeran song, slowly sinking, wasting, crumbling like pastry, about the personas, the main character of the song's face. And I realized so often when I retreat, that's why. That I'm afraid that that's true. I can't bear for anyone else to see it. And then I realized that what's underneath that is when I join it. And no reaction, no criticism, no response from another ever comes close to the pain of when I leave myself, when I abandon and criticize and shame myself. And even now, I'm afraid people will turn away, and maybe you will. And maybe you won't. And if this doesn't resonate for you, you're free to stop watching now and go find something that does. And if it does resonate for you, then I invite you into the possibility that you aren't helpless in the face of those inner voices that you learned from out there, or the echoes of the ones out there, or the ones in your current reality where people act as if it's unconscionable for you ever to make a mistake. And at the same time, expect you to embrace their humanity and your own. That's not possible. And when we set ourselves up to do impossible things, we very frequently fail. I mean, there are some things that's like, oh yeah, it wasn't possible before. And there are some things that are just unrealistic expectations. And I invite and I beg of you to reconsider treating yourself that way. It's like we learned as children, we were safer if we just shamed on ourselves and beat them to the draw. I did. But that trick Bullwinkle never really works. It just leaves us in puddles of pain. Like, oh, there's my broken arm. Let me bang it against the wall. That'll help. Probably not. Unless the pain is so numbing, you can't feel the hurt and disappointment under it. And that's a thing that I've learned and noticed. And so I invite you to greet, even if it's just in a glimpse, a side-eyed glance, this part of yourself for a moment with a kind eye. For a moment with a kind eye. And if you can't, to let the sacred breath come in and soothe you and go out and carry away a little piece of the flotsam, a little piece of the jetsam, a little bit of the debris of these old wounds. That's what they are for most of us. They're old wounds. And rather than treating it as a character flaw and stepping on the wounded place, I invite you to meet it as your humanity, a call inside of you for your own love, and offer even a drop. If that's all you can do, and in the past you've met it with shame or blame, a drop of love is an enormous shift. And a shift of a single degree can change the trajectory of a lifetime. I'm going to stop talking now and play the flute for a few minutes and let you just ease into this or out of it. You don't have to touch it for any longer than you're able to, just to be with yourself. See yourself in this moment with a kind eye and be present with whatever is alive in you, for you, with you. And if you find you're unable to find a part of yourself that's able to hold you in love, maybe you can just open to the possibility. And if you have found, bring your awareness to that. Bring the light to that side of you and let it shine a little more to the side of you that perhaps still feels a little bit in shadow. Just a little bit of grace, just a little bit of kindness, just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit. Sometimes an IV drop is all we can receive, and too much saturates us and runs off like ground that's been in rain. I invite you today to be gentle with yourself. And here's the other thing I noticed just now as I was playing the flute. Yesterday, I had all my troubles seemed so far away. I'm watching that movie. It's delicious, by the way. I had offered to do something that's really juicy for me, for a friend. And when I did it, it was so multi-layered, multi-dimensional. I found myself playing flutes in the singing bowl to punctuate it. There were all these layers, and I was sitting on the couch where I am. And as I was speaking about light and divine love, the sun was pouring through the skylight over me. So I was bathed in this channel of light. My friend's like, "How did you do that?" I didn't. And it was so juicy and so beautiful. And she thanked me so tenderly and said, "Oh, this is such a gift. You have such a gift. Thank you so much. I'd rather have this than all the money in the world. Thank you." That part of me felt like my, and then I made this mistake. I was so caught up in all the things of my day. I just spaced something obvious. And that, I think part of the way it landed so hugely for me was that I'd let myself feel so good about myself. And I was afraid that the messages I'd gotten about that being arrogant, "You're too big for your britches. Oh, you're so full of yourself." Well, I ask you again, who else are you supposed to be full of but you? And there's a difference between being puffed up in a way to protect ourselves and being so full of the beauty and joy of who we are that we overflow. And for me this morning, showing up here at all was a way to meet and hold that part of myself. And forgive me, this morning I've looked more at my eyes in on the screen than I have through the camera at you. I think because it's so scary. And so it's a way of me holding that afraid part of myself. And I invite you, if you notice in a moment yourself feeling really full of yourself, I'm afraid that other people might receive that as arrogant. And it might be true that it's arrogance, and and then the shame coming up, to look at that with a kind eye and consider for a moment that you are already beautiful, you are already enough, and that you are human, and making mistakes is how you learn. So today I invite you to get messy, take chances, and make mistakes. What if it's time? What if what you learn from those mistakes, from getting messy, from taking chances, will be a gift to everybody around you, everyone you touch and everyone they touch? What if? I invite you to step into that possibility today, and maybe tomorrow, and maybe the next day, anytime this is alive in you. How can we meet others with compassion if we shut ourselves down, if we shame on ourselves? It's the lowest vibration you can hold. No one who loves you would wish that upon yourself. I invite you to bring in today that drop of self-love, that drop of kindness, that drop of grace, and to see yourself, even if it's just a side-eyed glance for a moment, with kind eyes. That's my wish and my blessing for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Julie Ling. Today, I hope you'll be kind and let your heart, even if sometimes it croaks a little bit, sing.